I've always suffered with insomnia. Even from a young age, like 9 or 12, it's always plagued me. I usually just stay up doing meditative things until I fall asleep. That's before I got my car and driver's license. Now I just take long drives to the rural parts of my county where the woods and farmland are. No one is ever out on the road, so it's very peaceful. With that being said, it doesn't mean I'm alone on those dirt roads. The things I've seen have both horrified and intrigued me. I'll share a few experiences I have had on these stretches of lonely road. The figure. During one of my late-night drives, I went further than I usually do. The road gets older and more overgrown in those parts. It basically leads to a very ancient forest with nothing but tire marks as a road. I'm driving, and all of a sudden I catch something in my headlights. A tall humanoid figure covered up by the bushes, facing a tree with its arms by its side, Blair Witch style. I've seen stuff like this before, so I just take a mental note of it and continue on exploring. For context, the things you encounter out here at night aren't necessarily hostile. They won't mess with you if you don't mess with them. I didn't see that particular figure for the rest of the night, and I didn't get a good look at them because of the bushes covering them. All I knew at the time is that they were tall as shit. I'm talking making basketball players look scrawny. Other than its freakish height, the proportions were all out of whack. One shoulder was huge and beefy but had a twig-like arm attached to it, and the other shoulder was thin but had a bodybuilder arm at the end of it. That night was pretty uneventful, so I decided to head back early and try to sleep. The next night was much more interesting. As per usual, I couldn't sleep, so I hopped on my car and drove to the rural dirt roads. I decided to head back into those deep woods to see if I could see that weird, tall figure again. I'm driving slowly down this forest for 30 minutes, radio off, dead silent woods, and I don't see a thing, which is pretty uncommon not to see something weird. I closed my eyes and sighed, running my fingers through my hair. When I opened them, the figure was there. Misshapen body, arms at its sides, facing the opposite direction. It was directly in front of my headlights, and I got a better look at it. This thing was wearing a filthy dark green trench coat with some torn brown jeans and boots splattered with mud. The figure's legs were also misshapen and uneven. One leg was swollen and was as thick as a car tire, while the other leg was literally just skin and bones. The hair on the back of its head waxed patchy and looked like a failed buzz cut. It stretched out its skinny arm like it was getting ready to point at something to the side. The figure's hands made finger scissors that opened and closed. I sat there, completely in shock. My heart sank with the realization. It was mocking me. A while back in school, I got bullied by this asshole who called me Snip Snip and would constantly make the same scissoring motion with his fingers. He called me this because, well, I'm a trans girl. I grunted in anger and gestured for this thing to move to the side. Its back was facing me, so it didn't see. I had serious thoughts of running this thing over, but I remembered. If I don't mess with them, they won't harm me. I just drove around it and didn't dare look in the rearview mirror to see its face. It was facing backwards for a reason. I still see it from time to time, and it always is mocking me with gestures, mimicking something painful from my past. Sign language to mock my sibling who went deaf from an infection, waving a fist around violently to reference my physical ex, the gesture of holding a cigarette to make fun of my aunt who died of lung cancer, etc. This thing really just pisses me off more than anything. Its mutated-ass body is kind of unnerving, though. The Eater. The Eater is a pretty common one to see on those roads at night. My first encounter with it was just like all the other times I see this thing. It's semi-humanoid with pitch-black skin and a very obese frame. It walks on all fours like a gorilla. It has tiny claws for hands. Its face is like a leech with dead, glazed-over eyes on the sides of its neck, and the gross thing has a long tongue. I'll see it early on in my drives. The Eater is usually crouched over a corpse of a dead animal with a chunk of the carcass's meat in its tiny hands. The Eater just licks the meat with that huge tongue. It just laps up gore and blood. I don't think it hunts. It's more of a scavenger. The Eater is very docile and gets kind of curious when I pass by. It doesn't get too close, though. Sometimes I'll throw some leftover dinner I have into the tall grasses for it. I still wouldn't touch it if you fucking paid me. Live and let live is what I've learned in these places. Skinless. Skinless is one of the more dangerous things out in those woods. Whenever I see her, I immediately turn around and go straight home. She's a skinless woman, hence the name, in a white dress soaked in blood. Her flayed body is always bleeding, and she has a large butcher's knife clenched in her hand. She appears in the tall grass and will stumble towards your car slowly. She's slow, but she will catch up eventually. Skinless will stand by your driver's side window and tap her knife against the glass. She'll ask you if she's beautiful in a voice that echoes through your soul. It sounds like a much more demonic voice is speaking under hers. If you lock eyes with Skinless, you'll have the uncontrollable urge to gag or throw up. If you do throw up or gag, she'll violently smash your window and try to flay your skin off. I've only had this happen once, and I managed to speed off before she could shatter the window. She kept screaming about how she will skin me alive. If you do basically anything, she'll kill you. I haven't really bothered to try saying yes because it's nearly impossible with the crippling fear and that sick feeling you get in your stomach. Your best option is to just drive away before she catches up. Once you get out of those grasses into civilization, you're pretty much fine. I may write about my first encounter with Skinless in a separate post. If you see her in the distance, just turn around and don't look back. Headlights. This is by far the most dangerous creature I've encountered on my drives. If you see this thing, you better go as fast as you can in the other direction and pray to every single goddamn deity you know. I almost stopped going on drives after I met this thing. Last month, I was on a drive that was eerily calm. There was nothing. No wind, no rustling, not even any strange apparitions. I thought it was strange and slowed down slightly while driving, my eyes darting to every corner of the tall grass in the forest. There was absolutely nothing. Skinless usually scares off some other entities and animals, but she only appears once every couple of weeks. This was different. This continued until I reached an old farm at the edge of the tall grass. I usually pull to a crawl and look at the barn. Sometimes there are shadows or a strange ram-like creature that walks by the windows. Nothing walked by the windows. Strangely, the absence of any horrible monster was making me afraid. That's when I saw it. Two huge headlights stabbing my eyes like two suns. I heard the rumbling sputter of a damaged engine. In front of me was a 1940s-style truck painted completely black. A sense of impending death fell over me like a macabre blanket, and I quickly fumbled with the stick shift to put my car in reverse. I nearly floored it as a scream erupted from inside the truck. The scream was not of this world. It ripped all the joy I had in my heart out and into the starless night. Whatever was driving that thing was pure evil. It was an ancient force of malice like the boogeyman or the devil. The truck engine growled and it peeled after me while I was in reverse. I didn't have time to turn around or else it would cut me off and crash into me. Eventually, I reached a clearing where I could turn around by putting all my weight into turning the steering wheel. I zoomed down the forgotten stretches of road with the truck in hot pursuit. My radio came to life with a piercing roar of static. It played an audio that still haunts me to this day. A woman was screaming in pure fear, a deep, primal howl of pure dread. In the background of her screams was that old "Here Comes the Boogeyman" song. A masculine voice could also be heard mumbling as there was a slicing sound and the woman's screams somehow got louder. I peered into the rear view again to see another horrible thing. Two huge, pale arms that were 6 feet long coming out from beneath the black truck. The hands balled into fists and tried to slam on my rear window, but I quickly swerved, almost hitting a tree. These pale arms coming from the truck galloped along the ground, helping it gain speed. I soared out of the old roads and pulled onto a modern street and slammed the brakes at a gas station. As I caught my breath and refueled from that horrifying experience, I noticed my radio was spewing a choppy static that sounded like a dying moan. Yeah, I haven't been out driving for a while after. I'm thinking I'm going to start taking a different route. If you do find yourself there, remember to chuck some meat in the field, look out for Skinless, and don't even think about heading to that barn.